We're going to talk about writing good criteria and determining point values. But specifically here, we're going to be talking about the point value piece of that part of what we're doing here with our rubrics. And so discerning point values for each of the criterion within your rubric is based on a couple of bigger picture things that might be semi-obvious, at least a couple of them, but we want to hit on them here. And so step one is to determine the point value for the entire assignment. And the way that most of us do that is we look at how many points we have maybe for our entire class, and then based on what other assignments their point values are within that overall point scale, we determine how much this one should be worth compared to those others and so on in relation to the total point value. And so we just need to determine how much this assignment is worth in the first place so that we can then decide on how many points we're going to break up into each of the areas of our rubric. The next step in this point value process is to determine which one of the criteria measures the biggest slice of the learning objective. Which one of the criteria shows the most learning taking place in the student's demonstration of learning, in their performance of the learning objective, in their submission for this assignment. And then kind of opposite of that, decide which criteria measures the least important piece of the learning. And then we're going to determine a point value for that one. Once we have those point values set, then we're going to balance the remaining point values left and split them up among the rest of the criteria within the rubric. It could be all equal to each other, or you can split those up, the rest of those points up however you feel they balance with the rest of the items we've already given points to. So let's look at an example. Let's look at the rubric that we've been using as an example of writing for the math class that I have. And so first of all, based on the point value of that class and the other assignments in there, in fact this is a discussion, and so I make all the discussions the same point value. In this particular class, for these discussions anyway, each week, I have decided that each one is going to be worth 50 points. So this particular assignment is worth 50 points in my class. That is, again, completely based on your point scale and all that, whatever you determine to be your point value. Now, within my rubric, I need to look for the item that shows the most demonstration of learning for this particular assignment. And by far, way out in front, the main thing that measures or shows their learning is the mathematics involved in their writing. And so the second item there in the rubric, the mathematics involved is absolutely the most important thing here. And in fact, it is so important, I put a point value to it of half of the total point value. I put 25 points on that particular piece of the rubric. Okay? You could argue, I understand that argument, you could argue, well, if it's 25 points, if it's so many points within the total, maybe you should break that down into, you could argue that, certainly. I'm leaving it the way it is for right now. Okay? The next step is to find the item that has really the least demonstration of learning. And for me, for this particular assignment, really that ends up being the submittal format, the way that they submit the assignment. The only reason, you could kind of look at that as being a counting item or it's just an item out of the instructions or whatever, but it is kind of critical for this particular assignment because when they go to take the real CTE test, the way that they format their document that they submit is a pretty critical step in the overall process. And so it ends up being important in their practice for that as well. And so I included it in the rubric, but it's the least number of points. Okay? Along with that, I chose another one, partly because of the way the rest of the points balance out, but I chose another one that was kind of close to that. And even though this one's important, trust me it is in math, I chose it to be the next least number of points. And so the question being answered in there, what they submit, that they actually say, the number of rungs on the ladder is, or the distance from point A to point B is so many feet, whatever the answer to the question is. Yes, that's critical, that they need to include that, but based on the fact that they already have a solution and showed their procedure and, the other things in the rubric, it's still kind of down in terms of the point value to that particular step in this assignment. Now, if you'll look and see, I have the top criteria, the procedure and solution ones, and the last one, replying to peers. I have 4 left, and I feel that those are pretty balanced in terms of the importance within this particular assignment. And notice that I have 25, 3, and 2. I have 30 points taken up so far in my 50-point total. And so the 20 points that I have left over, I'm just going to split it between those 4. Now, you could still, determine which one's the next and most important and still continue to split them up that way. But I feel that they're all pretty much equal. And so I'm going to put 5 points as the point value to all of the rest of the pieces of this rubric. Now, again, that's just an example. You can determine your point values how you choose, but this is one example of how to do that process to determine the point values of your criteria in your rubric.